When the heart is tired and searching, when the soul is worn and still, every step feels slow and heavy. Every day another hill. There is mercy in the journey. There is light beyond the hill. Rushed institute, guiding hearts, building homes, elevating life.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Rushd Career. If you're listening to this while watching others move ahead, while seeing peers advance, settled, succeed, or appear to arrive at places you once believed you would have reached by now, I want you to pause here with me. Not to analyze, not to correct yourself, but simply to be present. This episode is for the quiet ache you carry when personal timeline no longer resembles the one you planned for or prayed for. The ache that settles in when effort is not translated into arrival, when doors you knocked on remain closed, when dua feels unanswered, and when patience begins to feel heavier than it once did. Many of you are not jealous in a loud or obvious way. You congratulate sincerely. You attend celebrations. You offer support. You show up with dignity. And yet, inside, there is a tightening you do not speak about. A momentary sting you swallow quickly. A question that rises and is pushed away just as fast. Why not me? Why not yet? What am I missing? You feel ashamed for even asking, so you bury the question rather than explore it. Let me say this to you gently. Delay does not only test patience, it tests identity. It tests whether you still know who you are when progress is not feasible yet. It tests trust, not just in outcomes, but in Allah's wisdom itself. It tests whether your heart believes that Allah is still actively guiding your life when nothing seems to be moving. This kind of waiting can feel like spiritual suspension. You're still praying, still believing, still showing up, but a quiet doubt begins to form beneath the surface. Has my effort been overlooked? Has my sincerity been misjudged? Has my time passed? These questions do not make you weak, they make you human, especially in a world that constantly displays progress without context and success without struggle. A world that rarely shows the unseen years of delay that shaped the people you now admire. You are not forgotten, you are not late, and you have not been bypassed. But it is possible that you are standing in a space where Allah is shaping something deeper than position, something less visible than arrival, depth before elevation, anchoring before advancement, inner clarity before outer movement. Today is not about silencing envy with guilt or dismissing comparison with spiritual slogans. It is about honesty, about understanding what delay is doing to your heart, about learning how to carry waiting without letting it harden you, embitter you, or quietly turn you against yourself. Because delay can either refine the heart or exhaust it, depending on whether it is met with awareness or resistance. This conversation is here to help you remain whole while you wait, to remind you that waiting itself is not wasted, and gently return your heart to the one who is still writing your timing with care and precision, even when you cannot yet see the shape of what is coming. Delay is one of the most spiritually demanding experiences because it quietly destabilizes certainty. It does not arrive with drama or clarity. It settles in slowly when your life appears to move at a different pace while others accelerate. The mind begins searching for explanation. You replay past decisions. You revisit moments where you wonder if you chose wrongly or hesitated too long. You begin measuring effort against outcome and questioning why they no longer seem proportional. And over time, delay stops feeling like timing and starts feeling like judgment. This pain is intensified by the world we live in, Modern life rarely allows waiting to remain private. Social media turns deeply personal milestones into public scorecards, promotions, engagement, homes, titles, stability, all displayed without the years of struggle, uncertainty, or sacrifice that preceded them. You're not only waiting in silence, you're watching others move forward in full view while your own progress feels invincible. Comparison becomes unavoidable and the heart grows tired of explaining itself. The Quranic worldview does not dismiss this pain or shame it. It recognizes that the human heart compares instinctively, but it reframes comparison as a spiritual test, not as a verdict on your worth or your standing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Delay is not proof of neglect. It is often proof of precision. Allah's timing is not random and it's not reactive. It is deliberate, even when it is difficult to understand from where you're standing. Many people do not break because they lack ability or they lack intelligence or effort. They break because they interpret delay as personal failure rather than divine process. They begin internalizing the pause as rejection rather than seeing it as part of a longer formation. When this interpretation takes hold, waiting becomes unbearable, not because of the time itself, but because of the meaning assigned to it. If delay feels personal, it is because your heart is invested. The investment is not a flaw, it is a sign of care, of sincerity and hope. But a heart that is invested needs anchoring. Without anchoring, it will drift towards self blame, comparison, or despair. With anchoring, delay can become a place of deep refinement rather than quiet erosion. This is where the work is not to rush the process, but to stabilize the heart within it, to return certainty to Allah's wisdom when outcomes feels distant, and to remember that a pause in movement is not a pause in purpose. Comparison rarely enters the heart announcing itself as envy. It arrives far more subtly, dressed as self-interrogation, as reflection that slowly turns into doubt, as a quiet habit of internal measurement that runs in the background of your days. You begin revisiting past decisions, wondering if you chose right or if you chose wrong, waited too long, or lacked the courage when it mattered. You start questioning whether something essential is missing in you, something others seems to possess naturally. At first, this feels like accountability, like maturity, like honest self-assessment. But over time, it becomes relentless. Every success you witness becomes a mirror held up to your own life. Every delay becomes evidence in the case you are building up against yourself. The heart grows tired, not because it is idle, but because it is constantly defending its worth. Psychology tells us that comparison erodes self-trust. It fractures confidence by outsourcing evaluation to external benchmarks. Islam goes further and exposes the spiritual cost. When comparison becomes constant, it quietly shifts the heart's gaze away from Allah's wisdom and towards people's outcome. You stop asking what Allah may be cultivating within you through this season, and you start asking what you are missing, what you failed to secure, what others seems to have been given instead. This shift is dangerous, not because it makes you feel sad, but because it distorts interpretation. Comparison does not only steal joy, it alters meaning. You begin reading delay as rejection rather than refinement, silence as neglect rather than protection, waiting as evidence of being overlooked rather than being prepared. The heart, once anchored in trust, becomes reactive, interpreting life through the lens of scarcity rather than wisdom. If left unchecked, comparison slowly teaches the heart to doubt divine timing while scrutinizing human timelines. And the longer this gaze remains fixed outward, the harder it becomes to recognize what is quietly being shaped inward. This is why comparison must be named gently but clearly, not as a moral failure, but as a spiritual redirection that needs correcting before it hardens into belief. The work here is not to stop noticing others entirely, but to return the heart to its proper orientation, back to asking what this season is forming in you, rather than what it appears to be withholding from you. Now, pause here for a minute, because this is where many hearts quietly turns against themselves. Delay is often mistaken for stagnation, especially in a world that measures worth by feasible movement. When nothing appears to be happening outwardly, it's easy to conclude that nothing is happening at all. But spiritually, delay is rarely empty. It is often dense with formation that does not announce itself. In these quieter seasons, character is being tested without applause. Dependence is being purified without recognition. Intention is being clarified without immediate reward. The work is real, even when it is unseen. Allah does not rush growth. He is not bound by urgency or external pressure. He deepens root before raising structures. He strengthens foundation before allowing elevation. When growth happens too quickly without depth, instability follows. This is a pattern Allah warns us about repeatedly because collapse after elevation is far more painful than waiting before it. What feels like being left behind may, in truth, be protection. Protection protection from arriving too early as someone you would not recognize or be able to sustain, protection from success that would expose weakness that have not yet been addressed, protection from environment that demands strength you have not yet been given. Delay can be Allah's way of saying, not yet, because who you are becoming still matters. Delay is not wasted time even when it feels heavy and confusing. It is the shaping of inner resources that cannot be rushed. And while preparation is rarely comfortable, it is often merciful. The challenge is not to pretend that waiting is easy, but to remain attentive within it, to trust that just because growth is not visible, it is not absent, and to believe that when movement comes, it will arrive with a depth and stability needed to carry it without losing yourself. Now, before we talk about trust, we need to talk about fear. The fear beneath delay is rarely just about missed opportunities or slower progress. It cuts deeper than that. It touches identity. It raises the quiet terror of becoming irrelevant, forgotten, or overlooked, not only by people, but in a way that begins to feel existential. You fear being the one whose name is not mentioned, whose efforts are unseen, whose presence no longer seems to matter. This is not just professional anxiety, it is a crisis of belonging and worth. This fear does not always speak loudly, it whispers conclusions you will never say out loud. That Allah must favor others more, that their du'a is stronger or purer than yours, that your effort was insufficient, your sincerity is flawed, your worth is somehow less. These thoughts are painful, not because they are true, but because they feel convincing when waiting stretches on and reassurance is absent. Islam does not shame this fear or dismiss it as weak faith. It addresses it by correcting the conclusion it draws. Allah's distribution is not a comparison. One person's opening is not another person's rejection. Risk, sustenance, was never a race where some win and others lose. And timelines were never moral rankings. They're not evidence of who is loved more, who prayed better, or who deserves more care. When the fear of being left behind takes the lead, faith subtly shifts posture. Instead of trusting, it begins negotiating. You start recalculating effort. You begin questioning intention. You look for formulas that might force movement. Dua becomes anxious rather than surrendered. Worship becomes a transaction rather than a connection. This is not because the heart is insincere, but because fear is crowding our trust. Here's the truth that needs repeating gently but firmly. You cannot measure divine care by visible progress. Allah's closeness is not displayed on timelines, by promotions or milestones. Some of the most beloved servants of Allah experienced long seasons of obscurity, delay, and isolation before any outward change appeared. Their worth was never in question, even when their path was quiet. The work in this season is not to eliminate fear entirely, but to refuse its authority. Fear may speak, but it does not get to interpret Allah for you. Trust does not mean pretending the waiting does not hurt. It means choosing not to let pain rewrite your understanding of Allah's mercy. Now, let's talk about how to remain whole while waiting. Waiting tests sincerity in ways that actions rarely does. When progress is visible, intention feels affirmed. Effort is rewarded with feedback. Movement reassures the heart that it is doing something right. But when waiting stretches on, when there is no clear sign that effort is translating into outcome, sincerity is exposed. It is either purified or slowly exhausted. Waiting asks a harder question than action ever does. Would you still show up if no one could see it? Would you still trust if no reassurance arrived? Excellence in delay looks very different from excellence in motion. It is not loud. It is not impressive. It does not attract praise. It looks like continuing to do what is right when no one is watching and nothing appears to be changing. It looks like trusting Allah without constant confirmation. It looks like maintaining dignity, prayer, and effort when certainty feels thin. This form of excellence is quieter, but it is no less real. Waiting without bitterness is not passive acceptance, it is active restraint. It is choosing not to let disappointment coddle into resentment. It is refusing to allow delay to turn into accusation, either against yourself or against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those who learn to wait this way, they develop a depth that cannot be rushed. Their faith becomes less dependent on outcomes and more rooted in relationship with Allah. Their character becomes steady because it was formed under pressure rather than applause. Delay does not diminish your worth, no matter how convincingly it tries to argue otherwise. Delay reveals where worth is anchored. If worth was to tie to speed, visibility, or validation, waiting will feel unbearable. But if what is anchored in Allah, waiting, though still painful, but becomes survivable. It becomes a place of quiet strength rather than erosion. This is not an easy station to stand in, but it is a meaningful one, and sincerity preserved here will carry a weight that visible success alone never could. Begin by naming comparison when it appears. Do not rush to judge yourself for it or wrap it in guilt. Comparison is a reflex of a heart that cares deeply about its life and its direction. Acknowledge it honestly, then redirect your gaze with intention. Each time you notice yourself measuring your life against someone else's progress, gently bring your attention back to what Allah may be cultivating in you right now. Redirection is not denial, it is discipline. Be deliberate about limiting spaces that intensify comparison. This is not avoidance, it is protection. Your heart was not designed to absorb constant update of other people's milestones without context. Curate your environment with mercy towards yourself. Step back from what repeatedly reopen wounds rather than helping you heal from them. A protected heart is not weak, it is wise. Take your time to journal what delay is teaching you, even when you would rather skip the lesson. Write about how waiting has reshaped your dependence, your patience, and your sincerity. Notice what surfaces when progress slows, what fears arise, what attachment loosen, what questions deepens. Reflection transforms waiting from something endured into something understood. Re-anchor your timeline in remembrance. Let Salah punctuate your days not as interruptions, but as moments of recalibration. Prayer restores perspectives. It reminds the heart that time is not merely a personal possession to manage, but a trust unfolding according to divine wisdom. In remembrance, waiting is returned to its proper scale. Finally, redefine success during this season, not as forward movement, feasibility, or achievement, but as faithfulness. Faithfulness to pray when motivation is thin. Faithfulness to integrity when recognition is absent. Faithfulness to trust when answers are delayed. During waiting, faithfulness is success, and it is not small. It carries a weight that will shape how you walk when movement finally returns. This is how waiting becomes survivable, not by denying its pain, but by anchoring the heart so it does not lose itself within it. Ya Rabbi, steady our hearts in seasons of waiting. Protect us from envy that corrodes trust and from comparison that distorts truth. Grant us patience that does not harden, and hope that does not fade. Make delay a means of closeness, not resentment. Shape us gently while we wait, and grant us arrival at a time that is best for our heart. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. Delay does not mean you are behind, even if it feels that way in your chest. It means your story is still unfolding, still being written with care and intention. Some chapters are quiet, not because nothing is happening, but because what is happening needs silence. A story shaped only by movement will lack depth. A life shaped only by speed will lack wisdom. You're not standing still while others win and you lose. You're witnessing different timelines shaped by different wisdom. Allah does not walk on a single schedule. He writes distinct paths for distinct hearts. What looks like celebration for one may be refinement for another. Neither is superior, both are purposeful. So remain sincere while you wait. Not perfect, not endlessly patient, but sincere. Remain grounded while unseen, even when recognition feels distant and reassurance is thin. Remain hopeful while delayed. When Allah writes your timing, nothing is late. What arrives on time for your soul will never miss you, even if it arrives later than you expected. Divine timing is not careless, it is precise, even when it is painful. So, walk forward with trust, even if the steps are small. The fear of being left behind loses its power when the heart remembers who is leading the path. You're not walking alone, and you're not walking aimlessly. Until next time, remember this: your value is not measured by speed, your worth is not calculated by milestones, and your journey is not invalidated by waiting. Some of the most meaningful arrivals comes after longest pauses. May I make it easy. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Rushed institute, God